Hi, I'm Kristen Kalina from Mastermind Adventures, and this is something I'm calling the Road Less Traveled. Um, and this is just going to be a collection of thoughts and ideas and things that I'm learning or working through, and that I'd like to share with you. So today I would like to talk about a quote that I had put up on my wall on my personal Facebook page, and it is, "Anything worth doing is worth doing badly." And you're thinking, Kristen, you got the quote wrong. It's supposed to be, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And I didn't get the quote wrong. This is the correct. This is a quote that has really been on my mind, and it's impacted me a lot in the last couple of weeks. Really kind of thinking about our personal journey with Mastermind Adventures and with some of the things that we have learned along the way. And so this quote, I'd like you to think about when you hear it said that way, what does that mean to you? If you're going to do something, you might as well do it badly. So this was something, I'm actually not even sure if this was a post on Facebook that I saw, or if it was one of the podcasts that I was listening to, but I really love this idea that something worth doing, the first time that you do it, it's not going to be great, and that's okay. And I myself, I'm the kind of person who, and other people have observed this about me, I'm going to just jump in. I'm going to jump in both feet, and I might swim or I might sink, but either way, I'm going to learn something. So I don't generally let fear get in the way. Not that I'm not afraid. I'm totally afraid of doing new things. I'm totally worried about, how it's going to be and how things are going to be received, or how how, especially with what we do, if the kids are going to enjoy it. That's really the biggest thing to me. But I've learned that if I go ahead and just do the thing, that it might not be the best that it's ever been, but it might also be kind of great. So this past couple of weekends ago was our 5th annual Camp Half-Blood event, and that feels really big. Anytime you kind of have these round numbers for anniversaries, it always kind of feels like a bigger deal. So this was the 5th time that we've run our Camp Half-Blood event, and I've been thinking a lot about our very, very first Camp Half-Blood event. And at the time, my kids were pretty small. They were like preteen aged, at least, or I think, I don't know. So they would have been kind of little. Now they're all big, but I was worried about it. I'd been running programs and meetups and all kinds of Nerf games and things like that for several years for our community, specifically the homeschooling community in my area. So I knew a lot of kids, and one of them gave me this idea. I was running Quidditch, and one of them gave me this idea about Camp Half-Blood, because she had run it herself. It was something that she ran with her friends. So I loved the idea, and I thought, well, that would be a fun thing to do. And I'm hoping that maybe we can get, a handful of kids. If we can get, I figured at the time, if we could get like 20 kids, that it would be, worth our while to try to put together. And it ended up being a whole lot more than 20 kids. We did it at Borderlands State Park in Easton. We didn't charge very much. It was like $5 a kid, and we had this whole day full of activities that we wanted to put together to run. We knew that the inspiration for it was kind of a field day sort of an event, so that's what we went through. But I'd never put together a role-playing game, a live-action role-playing game for anyone, not for kids, not for adults. And I didn't know a whole lot about it, so I spent a ton of time trying to find things like templates and formats, like how do you actually do this thing? How do you how do you, make sure nobody gets hurt? How do you make sure that the kids have enough to do? How do you write a story that they can follow? So I did a ton of research, and I didn't come up with very much that was actually helpful, unfortunately, because it just wasn't something that was being done, to any extent that was like public and, where people were sharing like how to do this thing. So I also reached out to my cousin and her boyfriend at the time, who, her boyfriend Tom, who's actually worked with us quite a lot now, who's our husband now. He had done LARPing, live action role play, and my cousin herself had done a whole lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and so I was looking for tips on how to create this experience for the kids, and so they were pretty helpful. But really, it came down to I had to put something together. So we knew it was going to be a field day event. So we had tons of equipment that I bought. People were paying $5, so that helped to kind of offset the cost of that and the permit for the park and everything. And I think I worried too much about things that didn't end up mattering at all. So we advertised it with the homeschool groups, and we got quite a lot of kids to come because, as I said, I had already been organizing events for homeschoolers for several years. And I got a ton of volunteers and people that wanted to come and help. But it wasn't very organized, and it didn't really, I didn't know what I was doing. So we had, I don't even remember what the events were. I know we had potato sack races. I know we had like wheelbarrow races and things like that. I know we had like battle training, for the kids. But most of it was these kind of, classic, picnic type games, because I didn't really know what to do. And I did try to make up a couple of games having to do with, battles and buffers and things like that. But I really did not, I really didn't know what I was doing. And so, what ended up happening, the bad things that happened were we did have a group that got lost, and they never made it to the final event. We had one person who I was relying on for a particular activity that just he canceled at the very, very last second, like middle of the night, and I had to scramble and find somebody to replace them. And at the end, we had set up this thing where Tom, who I've mentioned before, he was the villain. And so what we didn't anticipate was that the kids, when they found out that he was the villain, that he was going to get like attacked by like 100 kids like all at once. And so we've made modifications for things like that. And it was pretty chaotic. I checked people in. I think I did have insurance. I was smart enough to make sure that was in place. But it was sort of an organized chaos. And I remember kind of thinking, having fun, but feeling like it was a mess and feeling like people were judging me in the middle of it. I didn't really know how to delegate because I didn't really know what to delegate. I didn't even know what I was doing. So it was really hard to tell other people, what to do. So anyway, I remember at one point, kind of in the middle of it, especially when the one group got lost, I thought, oh my gosh, I've just made a mess. I've just made a complete disaster out of this whole thing. And then we moved forward and we got to the end, and I tried to kind of blow it off. And then, it ended, and we had a big capture the flag at the end. And it was like, okay, it's time to go home. And it had been 6 hours of these different battles and activities, and a mystery that they had to find, these magical creatures throughout the park and talk to them and get keys and kind of unlock what the story was. And I just didn't know. I didn't know at the end, like how it went. And then I had like 2 or 3 kids come up to me as we were starting to pack up and leave, who were like in tears, and they were saying this was the best thing I've ever done in my whole life. This was the best experience I've ever had. I've been waiting my whole life to have something like this. And I was like, oh, we did it right. We somehow, it came together, and we did it right. Even though it was a mess, even though I was a mess, even though it was hot, and I hadn't planned for, enough water, and the bathrooms were, I can't remember if the bathrooms were a lot. I just remember it was madness. Okay, guys, it was a total disaster. But at the end, really the only thing that mattered was that the kids were impacted and had a good time, and that they had a moment. The kids that came had a moment to feel like they were important, to feel like that they had something that was unique and special about them. And so, we've got some kids that have come back every single year. Some kids, it's the only event that they've ever been to, but they come every single year. And I learned, the things that I learned was that my heart in trying to do the best that I could for them, it still came through. What I wanted, what I desired for them to feel special, to feel like heroes, it translated. And then I learned practical things, like I learned how to delegate a little bit better. That took many years, because it's not something I was good at. It was hard for me to ask for help, not because I wanted to control everything, but because I felt bad asking people for help. So I've gotten better at that. I've gotten better at communicating and using other kinds of supports to kind of help me organize and manage these kinds of events, especially with that many kids. We had hoped, we were like, oh, maybe we can get 20 kids to come out. There was almost 200 kids. It was like 175 kids by the time the whole thing was said and done. So that was a big thing to manage. And it's not like after that event, like everything always went right. There was several times where things didn't necessarily go right. There were other events where things were a mess, and I learned a new lesson. But every time, the impact of these types of events for kids, the growth that we see that the kids have, the friendships that we see them make, the self-confidence that we see in the kids that grows from year to year, it makes it all worth it. Because you can look out and you can see all the bad stuff that happened, and I could have focused on that, but really what was most important was that the kids had a moment, that they felt like they were the hero of the story. So I've got to roll back to this now, because we're pivoting and we're taking a new direction, and we've got a new focus, and it's a little bit more organized than it's ever been. We're really specifically putting together a way for more kids to get the benefit of these kinds of programs. We're putting together clubs and adventure game clubs in different locations. We're putting together blaster battle leagues for different locations, and quest clubs for the different locations. And quest is actually our tabletop product. And we want to be able to train people, and it's taking longer than I want it to, but it's still moving, it's still growing, it's still going in that direction. And I've had to learn to be patient, because not everything can happen as quickly as I wish that it could. But over the last, 5-6 years, what has become abundantly clear is that the kids really need this kind of programming. They need to be able to be outside, play face-to-face, role play, put on a different skin, put a boffer or a blaster in their hand, and give them the opportunity to explore their own personalities and their own values, and the things that are important to them, and the friendships that are important to them, and feel like that they belong somewhere. So I would encourage you to do something badly today. Start something that's not going to be perfect. Start something that's not going to be done right. Something that you've always wanted to do, maybe, and that you've just let fear or something get in the way of doing it. I would encourage you to go ahead try to do that thing today, even though. So, thanks guys.